This video is not financial advice and does not constitute an individual investment recommendation. He's 35. For 10 years he saved 60% of his income, lived in a studio apartment, skipped vacations. Finally the account hit the number that was supposed to mean freedom forever. He quit. 3 months later he realized, he doesn't know who he is when he's not working. This is called FIRE syndrome. Today we break down why the number in your account doesn't solve what you thought it would. FIRE stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. The idea: save far more than the standard 10% of income, invest aggressively, and accumulate a portfolio worth 25 times your annual expenses. At that number, you can theoretically withdraw 4% per year indefinitely, without ever working again. The 4% rule comes from the 1998 Trinity study. Finance professors tested, withdraw 4% of a portfolio annually, adjusted for inflation, with a historical stock and bond mix, and the portfolio survives 30 years in nearly every scenario. The FIRE community took that number and built an entire life philosophy around it. Peter Adonai, known as Mr. Money Mustache, retired at 30 with roughly $600,000, living on about $30,000 a year. His blog became the movement's Bible. Thousands started slashing expenses aggressively, investing the difference, chasing the day work would become optional instead of mandatory. The first week after leaving work most people describe as euphoria. Sleep in. No alarms. But research on retirement transition shows the euphoria phase lasts on average 2 to 6 weeks. After that comes what psychologists call a structure vacuum, a day with zero external anchors. Ask most adults who they are, and they answer with a job title. I'm an engineer. I'm a doctor. I'm a founder. Work provides more than money, it gives status, daily structure, a sense of progress, a social circle, and an answer to why you get up in the morning. When work disappears suddenly, part of an identity built over decades disappears with it. Studies on retirement broadly, not just FIRE, show a rise in depressive symptoms in the first year after work stops, especially for people whose identity was heavily tied to career. The risk is highest for those who exit abruptly with no plan for their time, and for people who were achievement-driven at work. A paradox of the FIRE movement: many people who hit their calculated number don't leave. It's called one more year syndrome. Fear the math is wrong, fear of a market crash right after quitting, fear the number isn't actually enough, pushes people to delay the exit again and again, sometimes for years past their original plan. The core mistake in FIRE thinking: money solves one specific problem, the need to trade time for a paycheck. Money doesn't solve the search for meaning, doesn't solve loneliness, doesn't answer the existential question of why you're alive. People who assumed FIRE would solve everything run straight into the unsolved remainder. A real story from the community: a software engineer hit FIRE at 38, quit, moved to the quiet dream town he'd planned for years. 8 months later he was back consulting, not for the money, but because he missed solving hard problems and missed the coworkers he used to share them with every day. Psychologists distinguish two kinds of freedom. Freedom from a boss, an alarm clock, an office. Freedom to create, to travel, to build the project you actually want. The FIRE movement almost always sells freedom from. But it's freedom to that determines whether someone is actually happy after they leave. The human brain likes predictable rhythms. A job, even one you don't love, gives structure: a wake time, a lunch break, an end of day. Without external structure, most people don't automatically build internal discipline. Days start blurring together. Motivation without deadlines or obligations drops for most people within a few weeks. For most adults, work is the main source of regular social contact outside family. Leaving a job means losing not just a paycheck but dozens of small daily conversations, the feeling of a team, a sense of belonging. Studies on loneliness show recently retired people report a sharp increase in social isolation within the first few months. Not everyone struggles after early retirement. Studies on early retiree happiness show the people who do best are those who, before quitting, already had a skill-based hobby with room to grow, kept social ties outside of work, and had at least a rough plan for how to spend their time beyond rest. Coast FIRE is a variation where someone saves enough early that compound growth alone will get the portfolio to the target by traditional retirement age, and they only need to earn enough to cover current living expenses. This lowers financial pressure while keeping the structure and social ties that come with working. Barista FIRE is a similar approach. A person accumulates a partial nest egg covering core expenses through investments, then works part-time, often in a lower stress role, to cover the remainder and keep employer-sponsored health insurance and social contact. Surveys inside FIRE communities show a significant share of people who reach full financial independence return to paid work within the first 2 years, not out of financial need, but out of a need for structure, challenge, and connection. It's common enough to have its own name on retirement. The FIRE community spends years on the financial side, calculations, investing, tax optimization. Psychological preparation gets nearly zero attention. Transition specialists recommend starting to think about time, meaning, and future structure at least 2 to 3 years before the planned exit date, alongside the financial plan. Practical step: years before your planned FIRE date, start developing projects, roles, and interests unrelated to your current job. Volunteering, mentoring, a creative project, learning a new skill. The goal is that by the time you leave, you already have an answer to who you are outside your profession, not a blank page. FIRE-focused financial advisors recommend a test run, take an unpaid month or two off before the actual exit, and live those weeks exactly the way you plan to live retirement. Many people discover unexpected boredom or anxiety early, while the plan can still be adjusted, not after the point of no return. A separate, financial risk, sequence of returns risk. If the market drops in the first few years after you retire, and you keep withdrawing 4%, the portfolio depletes much faster than the models predicted. This is why many FIRE planners keep a cash buffer covering 2 to 3 years of expenses going in. After a decade of aggressive saving, many FIRE achievers feel irrational anxiety spending money in retirement even when the math fully supports it. Psychologists call this a scarcity habit, and it doesn't disappear automatically once the financial goal is hit. It takes conscious work to actually give yourself permission to spend. A concrete example. A household spends $60,000 a year. The FIRE target under the 4% rule, $1.5 million invested. At a 50% savings rate on a solid household income, reaching that number typically takes 15 to 17 years of aggressive investing. The biggest conceptual mistake most FIRE planners make: treating the exit day as a finish line after which pure happiness begins. It's psychologically healthier to treat that day as the start of a new project, the project of your own life, one that needs the same amount of planning as a career or a portfolio. Retirement transition coaches recommend building not just an investment portfolio but a portfolio of pursuits, 4 or 5 recurring activities covering different needs: physical movement, creativity, learning, social connection, and contribution to something bigger than yourself, like volunteering or mentoring. The loneliness of the transition softens when there are people nearby on a similar path. FIRE communities, forums, and local meetups for people pursuing financial independence offer not just investing tips, but emotional support at the exact moment the old work-based social circle disappears. A contrasting example: a woman hit fire at 42, but 3 years before quitting, she started teaching weekend yoga classes, wrote a minimalism blog, and built a social circle through her gym. By the time she actually left her job, structure and meaning already existed. The transition happened almost without a crisis. Fire isn't a bad idea by itself. For people in toxic work environments, dealing with health issues that require reduced stress, or with clear plans for their free time, early financial independence can dramatically improve quality of life. The problem isn't the goal, it's the missing plan for the day after. Before you actually pull the trigger on fire, check 5 things. 1. Do you have at least 2 regular activities unrelated to money? 2. Have you kept social ties outside your work circle? 3. Have you stress tested your financial model against a market crash in year 1? 4. Have you talked the plan through with a partner or family? 5. Have you tried a month-long test run? A practical detail often left out of fire daydreams: health insurance, which used to be partly or fully covered by an employer, becomes an out-of-pocket line item. Model that costs separately in your annual budget. Underestimating healthcare costs is one of the most common reasons fire plans get revised. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who wrote about the search for meaning, argued that people don't need rest for its own sake, they need a sense of movement towards something significant. Rest without purpose quickly turns into boredom, then anxiety. Fire gives you time. But time without a purpose isn't freedom, it's a vacuum your mind will try to fill somehow. 5 to 10 years out, the happiest people in the fire community usually aren't sitting idle and haven't gone back to full-time work either. They've landed on a hybrid model: interest-driven projects, sometimes paid, sometimes not, with full control over their time, exactly what the movement originally promised, but rarely delivers right away. The right goal for fire isn't the absence of work, it's the freedom to choose it. The freedom to say no to a project you don't like. The freedom to take a week off without asking anyone. The freedom to switch careers without fear of losing income. In this version, money doesn't replace meaning, it buys you room to look for it without financial pressure. If you're working toward fire, comment below with your plan for the day after you hit the number. Already have a hobby, a project, a community lined up? If this video got you thinking about the psychological side of it, hit like. Subscribe for more breakdowns of the psychology behind money.